Welcome to the Humor Arts Museum online reception for humorous contemporary sculpture and photography, curated by Karen Gersch. This is Reverend Artist Barbara Ann Michaels, Jester of the Piece. I'm very honored that we are here having a conversation among artists about why humorous art, why uplifting, kind-hearted humorous art, why is this important, why important right now. The Humor Arts Museum is a project of the House of Holy Humor, and it is meant to be a place where kind-hearted, uplifting art is curated, because sarcastic art is already really well curated and doesn't need any help. But in these times when hearts and minds need a boost, this is what we're here for. So Karen, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh, that was quick. Thank you, Barbara. And I said earlier, if any of you haven't looked at the House of Holy Humor, it's really wonderful, worth taking a look at, and to see the work that Barbara has created and has been involved in very heavily in her lifetime. We met, Barbara and I, when I was the curator at the Howland Cultural Center in Beacon. And she happened to walk in because outside I had put a couple of sculptures, one of which was a giant egg with feet. And it caught her eye and caught her funny bone. And she came rushing in wanting to know who had put this egg outside. And I had to raise my hand. So we met and quickly found that we had a lot in common and a big love for humor, for art, and for a combination of the both. And she was already knowing that she wanted to do an art museum on her site. So, and I was out the door at Howland. So this seemed like a no-brainer, a kind of step in her door that was open. And it's been great. It's been a lot of fun. And I think they're beautiful exhibits we put up. And so this one is a real gem, I think, because as I was assembling the other exhibits, and I was trying to find at first a lot of paintings and drawings that were humorous, that were funny, going back in time. And there's not a lot. There are, but you really have to hunt for them. But the whole time I was doing that, I kept coming up with ridiculous amounts of photographs that made me laugh outright. And at some point I said, oh my God, I could do a whole thing on photography, which is just about what inspired this. And then, because I happen to have a few sculptors I know who are tremendously funny. Their work is tremendously funny as well as just beautiful, aesthetically beautiful. I said, I'm going to combine the two. So that's how this exhibit theme was born. And it's been a great trip. It's been a lot of fun to assemble. And I have discovered new photographers and new artists along the way, which is always exciting. So we have quite a few artists here. Let me introduce you and then let them talk about themselves. So the first will be Bob Yorburg, who is a wood carver and who specializes in restoring sculptures. Well, he's restoring and creating from scratch carousel creatures, figures that actually you think of from carousels. He is the master of both creating from scratch and restoring carousel beings. And you'll see he also makes band organs, and we have one of those in the show. Has everybody here looked at the Humor Arts Museum, seen this exhibit, scroll through? Okay, great. So I can go through. Then we have Ruth Geneslaw, who is a wood carver as well, but of the smaller size. And she has the most fantastic figures that she creates within tableaus that are tremendously funny, sarcastic, that are politically inclined, and really wonderful. Seth Olenick, who I only just met through Barbara recently, is an unusual photographer. He is a celebrity photographer. He takes photos and has taken photos and has a book that's incredible of celebrity portraits, some of which you'll see here. And in the book, the texts that go with them, the narratives, which I want to ask him about, are just so hysterical on their own. And we'll let him discuss that later, how he came to that. Then we go to Jim Moore, who has been, I think that there isn't a performer in New York City who Jim has not photographed. He has been documenting performers from circus, the world of circus, mime, burlesque, eccentrics, specialty shows forever. And who else is here? Am I leaving someone out? Sandra, I discovered when I was the curator at the Howland. And she is a traveling person, and she usually goes wonderful places and takes gorgeous photos. So I was very pleased when she presented me, because of the pandemic and she couldn't really travel. She managed to come up with some gems of photos from her very own backyard. And I'll let her describe those as well. Ron Hershey is not with us, but he is also a world traveler. And in fact, that's where he is. He's somewhere in France. And he has wonderful photos of places throughout the world where he goes. So
okay.
So I don't want to,
right back.
Now that I've given you an overview, I want the artists to speak for themselves. And oh, who am I leaving out? Rick Weber. Oh my goodness. Rick is the other sculptor who works with earthenware, clay, and paints them. And his figures his masks and figures just made me laugh. They were just so exceptional. And I asked him if he would be part of this exhibit. Eli Ross works with resin, became very early on trained to work with resin and make it duplicate any other material. His pieces look like bronzes. They don't look like they're made from polymer, but they are, and they're so delicate and intricate. So we'll look at those. Rick Rogers, who I don't see on yet, is a photographer from Beacon, and his best friend is his bicycle. He thinks nothing of getting on his bicycle and bicycling to Poughkeepsie, to New Paltz. He puts it on the train, he goes to New York City, and then he just rides around and takes pictures. So it's a very kind of a local traveling photographer. Very interesting by contrast with Sandra and Ron, who really take to the road. So I think I've covered everyone. Have I left anyone out? Well, speak now or forever hold your pieces. Okay. Then I think let's start. Let's start with you, young man, Mr. Bob Yorburg.
Okay, sounds like fun. No, I came around it almost opposite of everyone else, in that I started as a magician, and I was building a lot of my own props and all kinds of things. And the fellow who inspired me was a magician who performed in Coney Island in the early 1900s doing magic and Punch and Judy. And as such, looking and seeing all of these black and white photographs of the old time Coney Island got me really fascinated with all of the props and goodies and machines and things. So I just, went into it head over heels and started researching and discovering and finding little bits and pieces that I could restore or duplicate or what have you. And having grown up woodworking all of my life, because my father and grandfather both built furniture, I really dug in and decided I needed to carve to duplicate all of the things I was seeing in the early 1900s and teens, 19 teens, what have you. So the image that's on the screen right now is a rabbit that was carved by William Densel, the original that is, and this is a reproduction, and it's sort of my own interpretation of it, in that I changed the trappings and what have you so that everyone would know it wasn't supposed to be a copy. So I do an awful lot of carousel figures, menagerie figures, rabbits, lions, horses, you name it. And I've also become really fascinated with the band organs that the carousels had that made music. And as such, I'm making organs from scratch and carving the facades and doing all of that. And here's an example of one. The reason, by the way, they're called band organs is they imitate a marching band. So a lot of them would have drums, would have glockenspiels, would have a triangle, what have you. This is a small one that was in one of Karen's exhibits. And as such, a lot of fun, and it says the happiest music in the world. I don't know if you can read that, but that's actually one piece of wood carved as a banner. So they're a lot of fun to build. They're very intricate and what have you. But the other thing that's really delightful about it is it puts a smile on people's face when they hear them, and it brings them back to memories of childhood. This is a nightlight, about 3 foot tall, obviously very Baroque. This too was a solid slab of wood that you can see one layer on top of another on top of another. And you can, if you were to look at it in real life, kind of look into it and see all the different layers, crossing over and under each other. He is a sculpture that comes out of the frame, and the candle that he's holding actually lights, as Karen mentions. This is a nightlight, your basic nightlight. So I'm fascinated with gestures and all kinds of really fun things. This is Laughing Sal. Laughing Sal was on the sign, by the way, it says, "Drop in a nickel and give her a tickle." And then she giggles, like she literally, her whole body just bounces. Her arms bounce, her head bounces, and everything else.
Tell them how tall she is.
She's life size.
You can't tell.
She's huge. And in the base there's cloth wrapping around the base, where there's speakers behind there, and you can actually hear her going, And so clearly it was invented originally, historically, probably in the 1930s, as an item that you would have seen in a fun house. So as you were driving by in one of those little carts or cars or what have you, you'd pass her and she'd be laughing like crazy. You also would have seen her outside the fun houses, jiggling and laughing and attracting a crowd into the fun house, almost akin to an outside talker. They've been seen throughout the country. There's one in San Francisco. They're all over the place. And if you go online and do a search, you'll probably see a dozen different versions, all of them with different faces, different feet, different dresses, different hats, different everything. This is as close to the original catalog picture as I could get. It was actually she was made from bits and pieces from the original machine, and she is paper mache. And as such, the original paper mache had deteriorated to the point where I just got like a box of junk and had to recreate what would have been there. So that was a blast, and she was just a lot of fun. And obviously, she brings a smile to everyone's face who sees her. And you have to, basically you start laughing when you hear her laugh. So she's a delight. This is also stencil style rabbit. And this was a lot of fun. My own trappings once again. And by the way, four-way book matched Carpathian elm burl, red and white oak wall, which I also built. So I run the gamut from, architectural carvings to mostly amusement, what I call amusement arts, meaning penny arcade machines, sculptures of rabbits or band organs or what have you. So my fascination and specialty is what I call the amusement arts, meaning anything that's amusing and fun and really delightful, brings a smile to your face. I will say one other thing, which is, I think, somewhat interesting, that all of my carousel figures smile. And the original horses, some of them are a little mean looking. And I suspect it may have reflected a number of things. One is possibly the mood or health of the carver, and the other is possibly something to do with either the boss or the client. There is a theory that's probably true that one of the carvers actually, if he didn't like the client, would have the tongue sticking out of the horse, like lolling to one side. So my pieces reflect my, I think, sensibilities in that they all smile. So that's my my overview. And pretty much. You have a question, Karen?
No, I think we'll do all the introductions and then go back and ask questions.
Sure.
So it's fair, but that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. And he's not a bad magician. I'll say that. So, Ruth, would you like to talk now about your work?
Sure. Well, I started carving wood about 30 years ago. Before that time, actually, I had been a fiber artist for over 20 years, but I had a growing interest in outsider art and folk art, and particularly the wood carving aspect of it. And so one day I just decided that I was going to try carving myself. So I began carving. It took about a year till really I had it sort of materialized and grew and had a plan to it. And a lot of them then they became vignettes, and most of them were related to some social or political issue. And my work starts with the title. That comes first, which is very unusual for a work of art. It's the words that actually give me the idea for the piece. So it's something that I might read in the news or observe on TV, or particularly what interests me is the language of puns, cliches, phrases, just things that just catch my ear. So a lot of them are visual puns, and they're funny because when you think about the words and you think about translating the words into visual imagery, they become very funny. But still, the subject matter could be very serious, and it's sort of a gentle prompt to people to kind of think more seriously about what they're looking at. So the pieces here, the one you just saw was that was called Shopping for Mr. Right, and that came about as a result of a single friend saying to me, well, can't you do something about women dating, about singles dating? And at first I thought, well, I can't really think of anything. But then, I don't know, I heard the phrase or someone said the phrase, and I thought, well, that sounds interesting to me. Shopping for Mr. Right. So this lady is in the man department, and there are all these little different men from various occupations. And of course, she has selected the cliche doctor to put in her shopping Her shopping cart is already filled with shoes and other things that she's buying, but she picked out the man in that one. So there's a humor in that one. This next one is called Not Tonight. And the funny thing is that I believe, I'm not sure how this one really came about, but I think I was listening to something on TV. I think it was some news commentator who was talking about something entirely different and said the phrase "not tonight," and that somehow triggered something in my brain. Interesting. And so I combined my skills as a fiber artist, because the base of it is all embroidered. All the phrases are embroidered on muslin, and then the rest of it is carved wood. And it's the quilt though is really also a trompe l'oeil of my fiber work again. But here it's in fact I have the piece here. So it's really about all the excuses people use not to have sex. So they're very funny. They're very funny expressions. And this one also was underdogs, which when you think about it, I thought, oh, well, there's this giant dog with a lot of people underneath who are underdogs. And so there's an obese person and an African-American and an elderly person and a woman and a person who's disabled. So that was my thought about underdogs. And he's right behind me here. And I only mostly hand tools when I work. I use mostly whittling knives and gouges, sandpaper and acrylic paint. And
basswood. You're working with basswood, right?
Basswood, yes, and sometimes they are combined with some other materials occasionally. For example, in this one, I mean, there's a piece of acrylic. This is called the glass ceiling, and that's, I think, a phrase that's familiar to most people. And so it's a statement about how women have not broken through the glass ceiling. One woman in this tableau is just barely above the glass ceiling, and of course the men are way above the glass ceiling. And you can see it's where they are. Some of them have a long way to go. So I never know what, it's metaphors, cliches, puns that catch my ear, and they're observations about daily life. I mean, this is really what I'm interested in doing, and just and kind of conveying my comment about what goes on in our world today. And so they're really quite small. They're really quite small. And
well, actually, looking at the dog behind you, Ruth, it looks quite large. I don't know if
the dog is quite big, but some of the, overall they're really not that. They're not like Bob's pieces.
Well, no. But they have so much charm for how diminutive they are. I mean, they really have detail and incredible detail and charm.
They are detailed, and I know that they are funny because, as I said, they when you translate the words, they just become very funny. But they really are about some of them are about very serious subjects.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like a gentle reminder to people to just raise their awareness about various subjects that we're dealing with today.
Yeah. And I think traditionally in time, sculpture has been a serious matter. I mean, when you think of, classic sculptures, they're serious, bronzes and, just the nature by which artists depict, using three-dimensional has always been kind of a very serious, somber manner and style. So it's wonderful to see the humor explored with three-dimensional work. Appreciate that. And Seth, let's throw a photographer in there.
Okay. So like Karen said, I photograph comedians or celebrities, but I focus mostly on comedians. And so the work that you're going to see is from a series that I did turn into a book. I ended up shooting about 250 people. I had to whittle that down.
Seth, I'm just going to stop you one minute. Barbara, are you there? Because we're not seeing his work on the screen.
Barbara's not there.
What happened? Oh, no. Oh, no. Okay. Seth, keep talking, and we hope she'll catch up.
I'm doing the stretch it out. So yeah, I photographed all these people. I made a book, and just the people that I chose. I kind of started out with like who do I love in comedy, and so I shot them, and then I would go out to comedy clubs. I would meet more comedians. I would photograph them, and then they would tell me, "Oh, you should photograph this person." And so I kind of created this like kind of crazy, those boards on the crime shows, where you can like connect this person to this person. I probably could create one of those and have like just a few people in the center, and everybody else that I've photographed is somehow connected to them. But yeah, that's kind of what brought me into this world of comedy. And I would speak to here we go. Barbara's here. So Barbara, if you want to pull up the website.
Barbara, we lost you. We lost you for a little.
What in the world would be more appropriate than the director of the humorous arts exhibition disappearing during the reception? What are you going to do?
I was going to accuse Bob of doing a magic trick. I don't know.
Zoom is like that. We just have to roll with it. If that happens again, someone else, please just call up the share and go for it. I trust all of you artistically, fully. So I'll bring it back and we'll keep going. But if I disappear again for who knows what reason, please just pick it up.
Hi, Mr. Amazing. I see you're on.
All right. So I believe the first photo that's coming up is Garfunkel and Oates. Yep. This is a comedy music duo. It's two actresses, Kate Micucci on the left and Ricki Lindhome on the right. If any of you have watched Wednesday on Netflix, you might recognize Ricki, the one on the right. So, for this one, they do not wear a fake mustache. They do not wear the fake, afro hair. That was 100% me. I try to make the humor in my photography subtle. I don't usually like to do like on the nose things, but in this case, I just thought it was too funny not to do. And, I double checked with them. Has anybody done this with the two of you? And they said no. So I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And then nobody can do it after me. And so, yeah, and that's just them in an elevator. And again, I to me, the humor in this is very subtle. They're not doing anything silly. They're not doing anything crazy. It's just, for people who know them, they'll be like, well, why? Okay, the mustache and the afro. All right. So you've got your Garfunkel and you've got your Oates.
Well, it's also, I think, the juxtaposition of the little mandolin, is it? And the big guitar.
Ukulele.
Ukuleles, thank you.
That's how
musically intelligent I am, yeah.
Yeah, and if you've never heard of them, definitely check them out. They're very funny, very, very dirty also. Which I assume from all of this, everybody's totally fine with, dirty humor.
What do you mean, sir?
So this yet another duo. It's funny, I don't always photograph duos. We just happen to have two in a row. These guys were called God's Pottery, and they were a humorous. I mean, like anybody who's seen them would probably be like, "Is this a joke, or are these guys actually like two very Christian, like clean comics?" And like it's all an act. And I've always been kind of fascinated with kind of like whenever I see somebody with a huge bunch of balloons, you know, you always think like, how many more would it take for them to fly away? So this is kind of like what I was exploring with this one, only in, you know, obviously a sillier way, that he has such a small bunch of balloons. But yeah, that's that one.
I appreciate that his toes are pointed in the air.
Yeah, I do try to go for real. I also very rarely do Photoshop work to make something, you know, fake. I very much try to do in camera as much as possible. I mean, there are a few things in my book where, you know, you look at it and you obviously, I'm not trying to hide the fact that it's Photoshopped, like somebody opening up their belly, revealing a computer chip. That did not happen. Okay, so now we have Rod Francham. So he's a New Zealand comic who had this character, which is this character in the photo, named Griffin Point. So that was actually his idea, to do the pointed shoes. And, you know, again, subtle, you know, it's all in the face. The humor is just there. I think, you know, whether those shoes were there or not, you'd get the humor, but I think the shoes just kind of add. Yeah.
I also love the palette that you have this pale flesh pink and brown.
Yeah. And then the last one is Janine Garofalo. Janine's been around for many, many years. Had a very big career surge in the 90s, but she's continued to do amazing comedy, stand-up, and acting since then. And so the one thing about Janine, so somebody put me in touch with her, and when we met, she said, I just want you to know I hate being photographed, but I liked your photos and I wanted to do this, but I'm not going to be comfortable. I said, that's fine. So I did my best to not overly complicate things or put her in a situation that made her feel awkward. And we did this at my friend's house in LA, and my friend just happened to have this welcome or not welcome mat. And I was like, this is almost too perfect. So let's use that. Let's hide most of her face. You know, all that really matters is getting the eyes. And I believe her caption in my book was something along the lines of like, my grandmother told me that a large forehead is good luck, or, you know, something along those lines. So yeah, that's that.
Thank you, Seth. I want to say that both Seth and Jim Moore have published books, and I hope we'll come back and you'll talk about that, because they both have beautiful books of their work. Rick Weber, would you like to speak, since we have your mask there?
Oh, sure. These masks are clay, and you know, I'm a hiker. I'm out in the woods quite a bit, and I guess you'd say I'm a tree hugger. So you know, I look at trees in the woods, and I actually do see faces in the bark. And so I was, experimenting with the clay, and I got the kind of a technique for creating bark textures. And then, you know, if you read about trees, they're like these presences that, oh gosh, they're wonderful. They're just full of community, and they share nutrients, and they help other species of trees, and it just goes on and on and on. I kind of would like people to be like that. So, you know, it would be a better world. So yeah, I started experimenting with the you know, rounding out the shape of the clay to make these rounded shapes, and then giving them some kind of a you know, an anthropomorphic touch. And then of course they take on, you know, different personalities as well. This one was a little bit different. After I made a bunch of the tree bark pieces, I started making more, you know, open faces, and my sister actually said, "This looks like my father," which I didn't even know that until she told me. It's a thin slice of clay, and I, you know, the nose was just lifted up a little bit, and the eyes are holes cut through, and then in the handling of it, it just kind of, after it was fired, it just kind of broke, and I felt good about it, but I didn't want to get rid of it. And then I felt like, oh gosh, this guy, you know, he's going to survive. He's, you know, he's going to get past this trauma. And yeah, so I put them back together, and there's thus the title, Broke But Not Broken, which could be, you know, he could be financially broke, like he lost all his money, but he's still going on, or, you know, you could read it in lots of ways. So, but I think it's kind of positive. He's going to make it through.
But there's also the comment these days when you're found out about something, you're busted.
Oh, right. Yeah. 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 Oh yeah, this one, No Respect. I got I think a little bit of Rodney Dangerfield in here. That's the title, but I wasn't thinking that. I was just making another mask, another face, and I started popping these eyes out, and it popped out of the kiln. It came out of the kiln, and I was like, oh my gosh, this one is a little different from what I normally do, and it just made me. I was kind of happy with it. It makes me, you know, it's got that look of surprise or just whatever Rodney had. And so another bark mask, a bark textured mask, and just a good feeling, you know, a good feeling. He's got the little mustache, and the eyes are a little different. And I felt like it had a little bit of an Asian feel to it. And just a friendly, you know, good-natured person always there, you know, somebody who's going to help you out. He's kind of got that hopeful look and a little smile. And I did a series of these wave pieces, and they're just kind of fun. The waves are exaggerated, like she's sitting there with this, you know, book, and she's kind of unaware that the waves are, you know, moving in on her. But she's going to read that book. You know, it's that summer must read one, and I'm going to finish this book. And great day at the beach kind of feeling. And yeah, it was just fun to exaggerate those waves, you know, and it gives it a different look. It gives it almost like a, well, you could say a tsunami's rolling in, but I want it to be more positive than that. So it's just a great day at the beach. So
that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Rick.
Sure. Thank you.
Rick has a show up presently in our area. Do you want to just mention that quickly, Rick?
Yeah, sure. I do a lot of different kinds of work. The show at the Unitarian Church in Rock Tavern in New York, which is close to Newburgh. I put in a series of paintings that I did last fall. They're all abstract, but they're all kind of bright and positive images as well. At least that's what the people I went to the church this morning, and they were very positive about the show. And I also have some photo collages that I did, and some masks. I have another 7 masks there that are different from the ones in this display in this show. So yeah, if you're interested in coming, The opening would be April 8th at 3:30, 3 to 5, 3 to 5 on April 8th.
It's a beautiful space, a very unusual gallery space.
It is. The lighting is spectacular.
Big. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Sandra, can we hear from you?
Okay. You have 4 of my photographs in here, and all of them except this one of my cat was taken recently. And I found that one because I was going through some old pictures in black and white, and I says, "Ooh, I think this would work very well for the Humor Arts Museum and with Karen." And I was up in the United States. I was living in Mexico at the time, and I was coming back to visit my parents, and I had to bring my cat with me. And they were living in Snow Valley. I don't know if any of you know where that is. It's outside of Fishkill. And after I got him there and we were staying, he was running around outside, and I went out to photograph, and I saw him coming out of this old box that had been part of the ski lift, because Snow Valley used to be a ski area for people in the area. And so they had things out there on the grounds that had been involved with moving the ski lift and moving people up and down the hill. And I saw him coming out with that sign, "Private, keep out." And even when I just saw him, I laughed, and I had to take a picture of Pie. That was my Pie Wacket that I had. He was a cat I had in Mexico that then came and visited my parents' backyard. So, and then during the pandemic, as Karen was saying, I didn't go on my trips to other parts of the world because things were canceled. I had a trip to Uganda and Brazil, and all of those got canceled. So I spent most of the time in the yard or nearby. And in this one of the 2 chipmunks, I had gone to the Orange County Botanical Garden to take hummingbirds. And I had found a spot where the hummingbirds were flying and everything. And I was sitting there patiently with a long lens. And suddenly these 2 chipmunks just pop up out of the ground and start touching each other and licking each other. And I don't know what they were doing, but this one here looks like he's talking. So this one became a National Wildlife Federation greeting card in 2021. And so it was called "Did You Hear?" And somebody gave it that name. And I figured, gee, that's appropriate. So, they gave me a whole bunch of sample cards and stuff, but I thought it was really cute. And I
think it's, wait, come back down, Barbara, come back down. I just was going to say, I think it's cute that it's put next to Ruth's "Not Tonight." Yes, today.
And then what's the other one over here? Oh, yes, I did. During that time, too, I took pictures of the birds' nests. I have bird feeders up and bird houses. And the first one that I did was of a wren who laid her eggs in a flower pot that was like 2 feet away from my table on the deck where I had breakfast every morning. And normally I hear that wrens are very leery of people and they can get aggressive, but that particular wren must have liked me because she jumped on my back and she walked between my legs and my feet under the table all the time. And I talked to her babies, and I've got them from the moment they hatched because she came and she started singing. So I knew she was telling me something happened. So I got all these pictures of them as they make the nest and laying the eggs and the eggs hatching at the moment they're opening. And so I did a book on that. Following that, the sparrows in the yard also laid eggs, but I had the feeder and the birdhouse up high. They weren't next to my table on the deck, so I could peek in. And when they got a little bigger, they started poking their heads out, and Mom and Dad would come with food, as you can see here. And this fellow came out and he was like screaming at his mother to hurry up with that bug. So I was sitting there very patiently. I learned to be very patient over the pandemic, taking pictures in my yard, because with birds, you can't rush it. So I did a book on them also in English and Spanish and all kinds of things with pictures and for little kids so they could learn about hatchlings and fledglings and everything. And then right underneath, because this is one of the babies, right underneath that, they started coming out and they didn't fly very well. This one didn't have to go very far, just down a little bit, and it wound up in my stone bird bath. And on either side of the bird bath are these decorative birds. And I got several shots of the little birdies that are about the size of that decorative bird, looking like they're talking. And so I have one that's almost looking at the other one, but I had cut the tail off. And then this one that's looking up, like telling its mom, I found a friend. So I took that one too, which I thought was kind of adorable. I don't know if it's funny, but it's
of course it is.
So, anyway, not being able to do my trips around the world, where I actually, like last year, I got to see the howler monkey again in Brazil. You had a picture that Ron took when he, of a howler monkey, and I did see them last year, but I just decided, well, what's close to me? I didn't go anywhere. I'll take what's in the yard. I also did a book on insects with very close-up macro pictures of insects that wound up everywhere on my deck and on my wall. And they're a children's book also in English and Spanish. So that's what I did, Karen. So when I go to travel.
You did good. You did good with what you had. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Jim, you still there?
I'm here.
Let's find Jim.
That's George.
Yeah.
So my photography career began when I was 16, and I bought a little camera and started taking pictures of my girlfriend, and then later on in life I started performing as a mime in the streets of New York for, I don't know, 15 years, during which time I discovered that what's really important is capturing a moment that will never be repeated in our lives. So that's what I went after. I went after photographing funny people and capturing those moments of those funny people that when you look at it, it brings a smile to your face. I mean, when I retired, I said I want to be able to take pictures and laugh at the same time. So that's kind of like what my photography is all about. And I love eccentric performers. I think they're just, great, and like bringing a good sense of life to everybody in this kind of chaotic world we're living in. This is George Carl. A lot of people aren't familiar with him, but he's actually one of the funniest guys in the world. He was up until he passed away, but he was on Johnny Carson's show many times. He performed at the Crazy Horse in Paris for many years. He won the Golden Clown Award in Monte Carlo with like 7 minutes of the funniest physical comedy you can imagine. So when he came to my studio, I just wanted to get a really funny picture of him, and he doesn't have to be moving in order to be funny. So that's one of the things I liked about those kinds of people. This is an early picture I took of Stanley Allen Sherman, who actually makes these beautiful leather masks. He performed for many years, but now he's basically just building all kinds of masks for people in all kinds of walks of life. I mean, professional wrestlers, and he's building leather masks and paper mache masks and all kinds of different masks. And he's quite a craftsman at it. He's very dedicated. Yeah. But I love this shot because it kind of really shows off the commedia mask very well in his posture.
And he was a performer himself. He was a commedia mime, so he really poses it well.
Yeah, he studied with Lecoq, who's a commedia dell'arte teacher in France. This is one half of a duo called
Acrobufos.
Oh, no, Acrobrats. No, not Acrobrats.
Acrobufos. Thank you, Jim.
I can't remember anything anymore.
Acrobufos.
Acrobufos. This is Seth Bloom, and the title is Seth in Bloom. And that's at the Big Apple Circus, and one of his moments, one of his joyous moments at the circus. And he and his wife, Seth, are on tour now, performing all over the world in their show Airplay, which is actually so delightful and so wonderful. And they deserve the attention they're getting. It's such a great show. Very inspirational show, by the way. If you get a chance to see it, you should definitely catch it. So this is a lovely puppeteer. Actually, she builds all kinds of puppets. This is a puppet that she's actually inside of. but she also has hand puppets and folding puppets, and she builds all kinds of puppets, and her shows are just absolutely delightful. I mean, they're kind of like almost a religious experience of joy. And I came across her. She performed at this puppet festival in Coney Island, USA, and I just fell in love with her and her work, and just really enjoyed documenting what she did with puppetry. Who knew puppetry was going to be for adults so often? Nowadays, it's more interesting as an adult puppetry art than it is almost as a child puppetry art.
Yeah. Jim, talk to us about your books, because you have so many.
Yeah, so during the pandemic, I wasn't able to photograph eccentric performing arts, so I decided to start a publishing company because I really love books. So I started a publishing company. My first book was actually my first book before starting the publishing company was a tribute book to a clown friend of mine, Rob Torres, who passed away at the peak of his career at a very young 44 years old, unfortunately. So he and I were working on a book together. I photographed him in St. Louis, I photographed him in Paris, I photographed him in New York, and we were going to do like 5 more cities and do a book called A Clown in Our Town and have him in these different geographical locations around the world. We did 3 cities, and then he passed away. So I didn't want to like shelve the book and not do anything about it. So I worked on putting together a tribute book to Rob, where I gathered photography from other photographers all over the country who had photographed him, because he performed all over the place. And then I also got a lot of comments from friends of his. He had so many great friends because he was such a charming, beautiful performer, and everybody wanted to contribute to the book. So I made a little wonderful coffee table book, A Clown in Our Town. It's a tribute book to Rob Torres. That was my first book. The second book I did was basically a compilation of my photographs from 2010 to 2020, photographing eccentric performers. It's 260 pages of really wonderful, fun photographs with 3 essays or 4 essays of Paul Zaloom, John Towson, Pat Olesko, Michael Smith. Really wonderful essays. All the photographs have comments in the back of the book by the performers that I photographed. And then that's it. And then I'm working on a couple other books coming out soon, which I'm not going to talk about yet. But yeah, it's a fun thing. I'm enjoying publishing. I'm actually backing away from photographing a little bit, but publishing more books and having fun with that.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
So I'd like to, we don't have a lot of time, I'd like to open it up for questions for anyone who has a question for anyone. Shout it out, unmute yourselves if you are muted, and
okay.
Go.
I'd like to ask Bob a question about what kind of tools he uses and what his process is, how he goes about making a piece.
Well, my tools are all chisels, carving tools. I'm deathly afraid of chainsaws and various other things that people use. And I feel that it kind of destroys the process. I think part of the fun, the joy, is discovering as you dig in and finding the piece in the wood. So I'm very genuinely wed to the idea of traditional European style carving, with either completely hand tools or a mallet and chisel, and that's it. And not unlike you, I use primarily bass. I've carved oak and mahogany and walnut and everything, but my favorite is bass because it takes great detail, carves beautifully, tends not to have knots, and I can really have some fun. So that's my approach. And being a tool junkie, I have hundreds of chisels, so.
Great. You. Anyone else?
No.
I want to follow up on that question for Bob. Bob, when you do the pipe organs, do you do the musical part as well? Do you have somebody else do that?
Yeah, so typically, like I'm building now 6 small crank organs, monkey organs, and so they each have about 100 pipes. They'll have carved facades and the rest of it, and they will work one of 2 ways. One is folded cardboard books with holes punched in them, not unlike the music rolls you've seen for player pianos. And the other is some of them will have BIDI, musical instrument digital interface, which is you put a little SD card in, and that controls the valves, which controls the air to the pipes. That being said, I don't arrange any of the music. I have some friends who specifically specialize in arranging music for organs, because it's a very special task. Not everyone can do it, or at least if they do, making it sound great is an art. It's not my forte. But I love playing other people's arrangements. So that's how that works. Thank you, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Good to see you.
I have a question for Ruth. Ruth, do you sketch out your vignettes beforehand? Do you have wonderful sketchbooks as well as, I love your pieces. They're just wonderful.
They're very rough sketches. They're just sort of like thumbnail type sketches, very, very rough, just to get the idea on paper. And then I find that as I work, because they take sometimes months to make, and as the piece evolves, other ideas come to me about things that I might want to include or change. I get new ideas as the work goes on. So I do have very little rough, what I would call rough sketches, just to record the idea. They're nothing to look at.
Oh, thanks. And also one more question about shopping for Mr. Right. Do you ever play with it and change the choice of the doll?
That's an interesting idea. Everything is, glued together, so nothing it's all
okay.
So that, but that would be an interesting idea, actually. Yeah, so that people could pick out a different figure, a musician or a basketball player or someone else.
Ruth, do you have any of your work in current shows somewhere?
Let's see, not right now. I had something in a show here at the Rockland Center of the Arts, but that closed last week. So, yeah.
I heard that she was in a show at the Humor Arts Museum.
Yeah.
Well, I mean in person, because that would be very nice to see in person.
It was that was in person. I don't have anything right now coming up that I can think of. Sort of taking a little rest now.
Yeah, especially with what's coming up. Yep. And
a question for Jim.
Yes.
Jim, how did you get access to George Carl?
Well, that was through Philippe, Francis Brune, who happened to be staying at my place during the time. He came to visit Francis, who was staying at my place at the time. And I said, George, can I take a picture of you? I'm a big fan. He said, I'd be delighted. So we had a great session. Actually, I have quite a few other pictures of him that are even funnier than that one, but that one just speaks out to me all the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Funny guy. He has some great videos on YouTube of his performances on several different TV shows that are great.
Well, back when you were photographing him, were you using digital then, or?
No, that was film, and that was studio strobes. $3,000-4,000 strobe setups. I had them set up in the studio, and they were already set up all the time in case someone would come in the house like that. I would just have it set up, and I was just like, okay, here we go, stand over here, I'm ready, boom, and I did a whole, I don't know, maybe like 15 years of portraits of performers in that studio when I was living down Hudson Street, which is in my first book, which came out in 1989. It was an exhibit
at Lincoln Central Library for the Performing Arts in '89 as well. The 120 pieces of photographs that I took in the studio. Yeah, I think you're in that.
Maybe. Were you doing your own developing of the film?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I needed to have control. I knew like what film I needed. I knew if I shot with this film and I used this developer and this paper, I knew exactly what the print would be when I looked through the camera at the very beginning. I knew exactly what it was going to be on the wall, because I had done it so many times, and I worked in a photo lab before that. I worked in many different photography places before that, commercial scientific photo labs and this and that. So I had developed this kind of film, this kind of developer, this kind of paper, and I knew exactly what I wanted. I mean, the film I was shooting was a very low ISO, with ASA at the time. It was called ASA at the time. Now it's called ISO, but it was like ASA 32. I would rate it at 25, and I developed it in a certain developer, and it came out. It looked like you shot it on 4x5. It was so fine grained and just and the lighting that I used was just so diffused and so beautiful. It's really. I can't do that anymore. The digital thing just doesn't work for me. It's not the same. It's not, I don't have that control anymore. It's really kind of bogus digital crap, Anyway.
I just want to say that for anyone who hasn't had the privilege and pleasure of seeing George Carl's 7-minute signature act, which is simply him at a microphone and what's the other? Oh, his harmonica. It is, you can YouTube it. You can look it up on and just howl.
It's
really
so good.
remarkable.
It's so good.
Classic. Yeah.
One of the funniest men. I mean, he was Carson's favorite comedian and physical comedian. I mean, had him on his show many, many times, He always laughed his head off when George came on the show. And there was a funny story about him. I don't know if I can indulge anybody, but at the very beginning of his career, he always wanted to travel with his wife. So he had his manager at the time include his wife in the act. What he would do is he would have his wife lay down on the floor.
I love this.
She would lay
I have
down
a drawing of this. Anyways, yeah.
And that would be like her participation in the act would just be lying down on the floor while he did
you can't do that, because they did a whole shoot together where he tried to hand.
Oh yeah, that was right. That's right. Yeah.
No, it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean that was very funny. Yeah, I mean, but she was lying on the floor the whole time. But yeah, it was very funny with the rubber arms. Yeah, hysterical.
I never saw her standing up, but she looked like she was taller than him. Yeah.
Seth, I have a question for you about what your process is in terms of how much you're collaborating with the comics that you're shooting to create what that is, or are you taking it from them?
Go ahead.
So it's a mix. For the most part, if it's somebody who I'm already familiar with, or whose work I really like, oftentimes I'll come with an idea. I don't know if everybody froze or if it's, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, it looked like it froze. So yeah, I'll come with some ideas, but I try to make it very collaborative. I also very rarely have assistants. It's usually just me and the person that I'm photographing, and that also kind of puts them more at ease. They're not performing. I don't have them like do your act. And everybody's like, oh, are they really funny? I'm like, that's what they do when they're on stage, but in person, like that's not how they are. And you certainly don't tell them be funny. You can direct them, but yeah, so yes, oftentimes like I'll say, hey, here's what I'm thinking, and then they'll say, okay, well, what if I'm doing that but like this, and so that's kind of where the collaborative part comes in. And for a lot of the people I photograph also, I go to their homes and I'll just kind of like wander around the home, see what there is that we can work with. And the great thing about photographing them at their home is they're in familiar territory. you know, that takes them out of that uncomfortable scenario even more. And so, you know, plus you have access to their entire wardrobe, which I've got to say has, you know, definitely helped. One person I photographed, I was talking to another comedian. I said, "Oh, I'm going to be photographing." Now I can't even remember her name, but he said, "Oh, she has this bear costume of mine that I haven't been able to get back." So I knew, okay, going into that, we need to use the bear costume. So that, you know, like little things like that kind of help to know ahead of time, because I never would have known to do that. And then sometimes they'll like email me ahead of time saying, "Hey, let's do this." And again, I'll say, "Yeah, we can do that." But I like to do 3 different setups usually with somebody. So we could do, if they have an idea, we could do that. And then a couple more things. So that's kind of how my process has been throughout this. And then kind of like, well, what Jim was saying about, you know, film versus digital. So I was actually probably one of the last graduating classes at NYU that did not go through digital. So, you know, it was all darkroom stuff. I worked at a lab after college also. So, you know, I was very connected to the film world and the idea. So I started working on this comedy project in March 2007. And the first shoot that I did, the idea was I would shoot digital, but then I also had a medium format camera that I would shoot film. And I would do that with every single person. And it only took me that one shoot to realize how cost prohibitive it was going to end up being. And since then, I've done just 100% digital. Sorry, Jim.
I have a question for you. What do you shoot, medium format digital, or you shoot 35 digital?
No, I shoot medium. So I have a Canon 5D Mark III that I use.
Nice.
Although, so my book is, it cover, well, so first of all, here's the book.
Great. I was going to ask you. Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys can see that with the reflection, but yeah. Yeah, so it's March 2007 through July 2013. So during that time, I think I started with a Canon 20D, then graduated to a 5D, then a 5D Mark II, then a 5D Mark III. So it's, or the 5D Mark III may have even been after I'd already finished the project. But so, you know, there's also a variance in quality of the photos. Plus, you know, I got better as a photographer over those 7 years. And so when compiling the book, you know, it's like, ooh, do I really want to put that photo in there?
I had the same feeling with my book. I shot with several different cameras over that period of the 10 years. And I had the same, I'd look at the pictures in Lightroom going, wait a minute, I must have shot that with a different camera because it doesn't look anywhere as good as that one there, you know, like that kind of problem, you know, yeah.
I mean, that, and then you have to kind of say, okay, well, the concept in this photo is really funny. The person is familiar to people, so let me just go with it. You know, and I do think my strong suit actually is in coming up with the concepts in my photography. You know, I don't think I'm a bad photographer, but I think, you know, like another photographer would probably interpret my direction in a different way. And I almost kind of would be interested in seeing that. But I've done like creative directing since and art directing. So, you know, it's my career has been very, I don't know what the word I'm thinking of is.
Varied, very varied.
Very varied. Very varied. Very, very varied.
Nice.
But I've always stuck within the photography thing since graduating from college, and I'm an in-house photographer now for a toy company. So it's an interesting life I've led.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. I think in the end, if you can say that, it's good. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
So last call, any questions? More questions?
I have another question. I have a question for Sandra. I mean, in order to catch animals, it is so, do you sit out there for hours wondering if they're going to show up? How do you, it's like a split second that moment is actually going to occur. So what's your process around being available to catch those moments?
I don't feel that I'm a very patient person, but during the pandemic, I learned to be. And all of those pictures were every day for hours in the yard.
Wow.
Okay, with a camera on a tripod, trying to capture them. Now, with the little baby wrens, I went out there, I got right up next to the pot and I was right there, and Mama would watch me feeding them and talking to them and photographing them with a long lens. And that was fairly easy to do. I could step right up to the pot. The other ones I had to use my telephoto. And the ones of the chipmunks in the park there, like I said, I went for hummingbirds. And I don't know why, I saw rustling over there in the ground. And suddenly I just turned my lens and thank God it was focused. And I just snapped a whole bunch of them. And that, I wouldn't say I waited, because I was there for hours catching hummingbirds. So they just happened to have popped up out of the ground in front of all of those plants and stuff and started carrying on. And thank God I was focused and all of them came out fine, and they were so funny to me. And that was just sort of luck. But all the other ones, the photographs of stuff of the baby birds and all of that, that was endless hours. And it tried my patience, because I'm not a very patient person, but I learned to be in order to get these pictures. Of course, I go on safaris all over the place, but that's not waiting as long. It happens and that's it. You catch it. I was in Brazil doing jaguars in the Pantanal, and there it's like they're there for how long? A few minutes, a few seconds walking along the shore before they jump into a tree. So you have to be fast. That's not patient as much as being quick and being focused and being able to get them doing that. But the yard stuff was really taxed me a lot because it's too patient.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. But hey, the National Wildlife Federation liked the ones of the chipmunks that they put it on a card. So, I thought that was cool.
Thank you. Had someone had a question for Richard? I thought that I had heard that when someone else was about to speak. Yeah.
I had a Richard question. I'm curious, when you put your form into the kiln, does it change from what you thought you were going to get?
Yes and no. It shrinks, for one thing, and you're never quite sure with the glazing what you're going to get, especially with me, because I tend to be like a mix master with my glazes. I use commercial glazes, and I go, well, maybe I want it to be a little drier, so I'll put some of this underglaze in, and then I'll mix it up. And sometimes it works really well, and other times it's kind of a shot in the dark. You missed it. So, and I unfortunately, I don't even write down what I do. So a lot of times I can't repeat what I came up with. I can't go, well, okay, I'm going to make a bunch of these now, and I really have no interest in that. Every piece is just takes on its own life, and I'm good with that. Mostly they do come out the way you see them when they go in, they come out the way you see them. So
cool. Great. Thank you. Are you showing somewhere right now?
Yeah, in the Unitarian Church in Rock Tavern.
Get close to me, Carla.
How close? The tavern or the exhibit?
I think it's closer to me, actually. Right?
It's on Route 17K. It's oh gosh, I don't know, a little outside of Newburgh, between Newburgh and Montgomery, I guess.
Isn't it on 207? I'm sorry, isn't it off
Yeah.
207?
Did I say 17K?
Yes.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I think I made a mistake. It's 207. I do that a
207.
lot, by the way.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think my brain's going.
You're mixing it up with the target.
Yeah, it's I have 7 masks and some paintings, quite a few paintings, and some photo collages.
I'm going to go see that because I'm not far from there.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful venue. It's really gorgeous place.
Yeah, the opening is the venue is lovely, and the opening is April 8th, which is a Saturday, 3 to 5.
Is it only on the weekends it's open?
I think, you could go in, like if you wanted, you could attend a service at the Unitarian Church. I actually did this morning, and I've never done that before. And it was quite lovely, to be honest, kind of non-secular. And when I saw the sign that they also welcome atheists, I felt so much more comfortable.
Well, that is the perfect segue to remembering that art is sacred, which is part of the reason that House of Holy Humor exists. House of Holy Humor, the trifecta of the spiritual practices atheists welcome, are art, love, and humor, representing that those are a life path, a sacred path, a way to navigate life. It's really been, and Humor Arts Museum is a project underneath there. So it's really been a total pleasure to be with everyone. I'm very honored to celebrate all of your work, and thank you to our guests. To our artists, it's a privilege to showcase your process and your work and what you're creating, and the Humor Arts Museum is your fan, and we look forward to continuing to fly the flag for each one of you. Karen,
I want to thank you all.
Thank you.
I want to thank you all for agreeing to participate. I love all your work, and I learn every time we have one of these receptions. I learn more about the artists and about the process, and that's really wonderful too. That's opens other windows and doors, and it. I think it's a wonderful. This particular exhibit is really lovely, all the work together. I think it complements each other, and it has just, each work is so distinct.
And there's more to come. So thank you all for being here.
Yes, thank you for having us. Bye.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.